Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of myNewsWrap, news from the area of SAP, Microsoft, and the world in between. So let's see what came up this week, last week, perhaps the week before, in the area of SAP. And I have not that many news, but they are all community related, which I think is really cool. So let's take a look at them. So first of all, community contribution in the area of SAP's Cloud Foundry offering with respect to proxying to the destinations that are available within the SAP Business Technology Platform in a Cloud Foundry sub-account. And there is a quite young, quite fresh project around that topic that has been, I think, first committed a week or a bit more than a week ago. It's under heavy development, but if you need something like that, so a proxy to the destinations within SAP Cloud Platform, then this project might be worth a look. And of course, if you want to contribute, I think contributions are very, very welcome to that. Now, a second community topic around the area of cloud application programming model by, of course, when it comes to the cloud application programming model, Gregor Wolf, who also published a blog post about that. The overall topic is how can I do analytics on top of the support messages that I have within the support launchpad or however it's called now of SAP in order to do some analytics like checking if there are some messages that are kind of sleeping and nobody cares about them, how are the distribution of priorities and so on and so forth. And what Gregor did was he created kind of a side-by-side application making use of the cloud application programming model as a service layer that fetches the data from SAP One Support Launchpad, that's how it's called, replicates it, and then exposes them to a Fiori Elements UI that makes use of the analytical capabilities of Fiori Elements. So I think that's quite useful from the business case per se, but it's also quite useful and available on GitHub if you are working in that area. So if you want to do a CAP application, hook in some external services and expose the information to Fiori Elements analytical UI. So that's, I think, really cool. And of course, contributions welcome, I guess. And then last but not least, from the SAP area, another contribution by Andre Fischer in the area of ABAP Steampunk. As you probably know, Andre built a RAP generator, which kind of gets you rid of all the messy scaffolding of your project. So putting all the bits and pieces in place in order to implement your business logic. And this generator has got an update, and I think that's really an important update because now you have OData v4 services that are fully draft enabled. And the generator now is able to do that and also is able to generate the draft tables for you. So if you're working in the area of this RESTful ABAP RESTful application programming model, ABAP, then this is really good news for you. And with that, I'm already through with the news from the SAP area. Not too much. I think I didn't miss anything. There is just not that many news around SAP at the moment. So let's switch to the Microsoft side of the house. First of all, of course, this week there was a huge outage of Microsoft Azure Active Directory, which is kind of the most central service of Microsoft. European customers might not have seen that much personally if they have been using Teams or something like that because it was in the night. But of course, if you had services running on Azure that relied on Azure Active Directory, well, then you were not that lucky. And if you're interested now in the postmortem analysis, I have referenced that in my show notes. And yeah, there you can see what happened and what Microsoft did in order to mitigate the issues. Quite interesting and quite openly communicated. Now with that, yeah, kind of low point in the last week, or low light in the last week, let's switch to the good news, and there are a lot from the area of Microsoft. Let's start with serverless, of course. There is one video contribution in the Azure Friday format that focuses on durable functions and durable functions in Python, which came GA, I think, last week. And now there is also a 20-minute video all around that topic. So if you're using Python, if you're using Azure Functions and want to dig into durable functions, well, that's, I think, kind of a valid start point. Then I also referenced the Azure Function Challenge by Mark Drucker, I think in the last 2 weeks, and now a third video came out with going on with the description of the solution of this support challenge. If you're working in the area of Azure Functions and durable functions and durable entities, then really watch all those videos and take a look at the GitHub repository, because I would state that nearly every functionality within the area of Azure Functions and durable functions has been used by that example. And it's a real life example. So it's nothing from the lab. It's really something that, from my perspective, is happening in the wild. And with that, to another video by, of course, Scott Hanselman in his series of computer stuff they didn't teach you. And that's all about Azure Static Web Apps, websites. And that's something that I think highlighted last week. Azure Static Web Apps, really a cool functionality currently in public preview. It's completely free. It's completely free to host your website there, integrated with GitHub Actions and with Azure Functions as APIs in the backend. So this is really a hot topic that everyone should look at. And again, if you know Scott Hanselman's videos, then you know that he's really great in explaining things. And this is a super valid start point for getting started with Azure Static Web Apps. Now there have been also some other new releases. One that is brand new, it's durable function. There is a new durable functions release 2.4.2, which has as a highlight the improved concurrency defaults for the consumption plan. So if you are having maybe some trouble with performance of your durable functions, then you should probably test against this new release, because this might really help you out in some let's say scenarios. Then there is also a new release of CADA 2.2.0 with also quite some highlights, like CADA is now able to emit Kubernetes events. Performance has also been a topic within the last release, and also introducing a new scaler for Microsoft SQL Server. So that's also quite interesting. So if you're using this Kubernetes-based event-driven scaling mechanism, then we'll take a look at the new release. And then there was also something that was, at least for me, a bit surprising. I think I have highlighted Dapper that became GA 2 weeks ago, or the release 1.0 came out 2 weeks ago, let's put it that way, is now proposed as an CNCF incubation project. So basically, Microsoft, who initiated Dapper, but it's fully open source, fully community driven, now wants to donate that project to Kubernetes. And that would be really cool if that would be happening. So great news for Dapper. Then there are some other news from the area of Microsoft. Currently, I think Java is getting quite some love by Microsoft, especially the Spring Boot area. So there is one blog post that I've referenced in the show notes all around enterprise best practices and Azure Spring Cloud reference architectures within Azure. So if you are working with Java, with microservices, then this reference architectures might help you quite a lot. And there is another blog post around chaos engineering. It's a blog post written in German from the Cloud Native community blog. And it's all about chaos engineering and chaos engineering with the Azure Kubernetes service. So all around how to bring down your pods in a quite chaotic way. And well, if you're interested in chaos engineering and how to apply that to AKS, then well, that's the blog to read. Quite interesting, and I would really happy to see also something like that for Serverless. That's super hard to apply, I guess, but would be interesting to see. Then to further topics around, well, not super sexy, but super important when you're working on Microsoft Azure. And one thing is tagging your resources in Azure and yeah, doing the right bookkeeping. That's probably something that nobody likes to do, but is really important to do in order to, well, be able to manage your Azure resources. And this blog post gives you a first overview about how to apply those tags in a reasonable manner and what you can do with that when you have applied those tags. And then there is another announcement or another general availability of the Azure Resource Mover. So if you want to move resources between Azure regions, which is quite important for especially bigger enterprises, especially when you think about the growing number of regions of Microsoft Azure, then this Azure Resource Mover is quite interesting for you. Now you might say that doesn't sound that complex, but there are some features within the Azure Resource Mover that really help you, like analyzing the dependencies between the resources so that you don't move your stuff and then everything is broken. So that might be really interesting. Okay, with that, I have two more topics around the world between SAP and Microsoft. The first one is a purely Microsoft-based information around a project called Naria, which was, I think, highlighted during Ignite. And it's all about advancing the prediction of failures within your Azure resources, especially within your, let's say, infrastructure, and mitigation of those failures. I think that's really quite new, the project. At least I have first heard of this name in this year's Ignite. And this blog post describes how Naria works concerning the failure prediction and how they apply machine learning in order to become better in predicting failures, and what they do in order then to mitigate that. Why did I put that in the area of SAP and Microsoft? Well, because I think that's really interesting when you are running SAP workloads on Microsoft Azure, because you're heavily relying on VMs, on storage, on disks, and so on and so forth. And well, SAP systems are usually mission critical, and everything that helps you with keeping them alive longer, more, and bringing in more resilience, I think that's something that really helps you. So if you're working in that area, so I'm definitely not an SAP basis guy. I'm the most far away from that. But if you're working in that area, then I think you should really watch this project and take a look what can it apply, or where can it help you with your SAP resources. And then another blog post by the one and only Tobias Hoffmann around SAML 2.0 and automatic redirect to your default IDP when you're using different trusted SAML 2.0 identity providers within your SAP system. The point is, if you have several IDPs provided within your SAP system, before you log in, you get kind of a screen before you log in that allows you to switch between the different SAML identity providers, but that's something that you usually do not want. You want your user to be guided to the right one, and this blog post will help you to achieve that mission. Once again, really kudos to Tobias Hoffmann with all his blog posts around authentication, around authorization topics, IDPs in the area of SAP. They're really super useful. That's just one other example in that area. Now let's come to the last topic for today. It's a bit shorter edition this week. And that's around tools and user productivity. This week, I had the honor to participate within an Azure Developer College, which was quite exhausting, to be honest. This was 1 week pedal to the metal doing Azure development, and there was one tool that was presented that I wasn't aware of, and that's jwt.ms, which is a web-based tool in order to decode your JWT tokens. And that's by itself already useful. But what's also super useful is you can then also navigate to the claims that are within or buried within the token. And within this section, you also get explained what is this claim all about in the token. So that's really super useful if you are doing the stuff that Tobias Hoffmann does a lot, or Martin Reppel does a lot around authentication and OAuth 2.0 or OpenID. Yeah, with that, I'm at the end of today's session of myNewsWrap. I hope I had some news for you. And with that, I wish you a nice Friday, a nice weekend, and see you next week. Bye.